Next we will discuss shift in budget line. We know that according to the assumptions of budget line theory, income of the consumer and prices of the commodities are remaining constant. But if price of the commodities and income of the consumer changes, what will happen to budget line? The budget of each and every consumer, only that consumer knows what is his or her budget. It depends on the income of the consumer and the market prices. And the consumer is purchasing many commodities, so everything happens within that budget line, not beyond the budget line. So when will this budget line shift rightward or leftward? There are only two reasons. One is either the prices of the commodities change or the income of the consumer changes. If the income of the consumer increases, the consumer can purchase more of both the commodities. If the income of the consumer reduces, he or she can purchase only less of both the commodities. Likewise, if prices of the commodities, we are taking into consideration two commodities only. So if prices of both the goods increase, the consumer and income of the consumer remaining constant, prices of the commodities increase, he can afford only less quantity of both the commodities. Okay, and income of the consumer remaining constant, if price decreases, he can afford more. Okay, so two factors are determining the shift in the budget line. They are prices of the commodities and the income of the consumer. A change in either of these or both of these will affect the budget line. Which way? Here see, 4 budget line curves are given. 4 diagrams are given. In the first diagram you will see a rightward shift of budget line. Okay, 2 commodities are taken here, tea and coffee. On all the 4 diagrams, tea and coffee are marked. This is the original budget line, CT. It shifts rightward to C1, T1 because the prices of both the commodities decreases. So the consumer can afford more of both the commodities. Income remaining constant, price of both the commodities decreases, consumer can afford more. Okay, maybe he was consuming the quantity 5 and 10. Now he can increase it to 6, 12. See the next diagram. Here prices of both the commodities increases. Income remaining constant. The consumer can afford only less of both the commodities. The original budget line CT shifts leftward to C1, T1. Next case is, so price increases, price decreases. We have seen the rightward and leftward shift according to that. Now, when the income of the consumer increases and decreases, prices of the commodities remaining the same. It is not decreasing or increasing. Prices of the commodities remaining constant, income of the consumer is increasing here. So naturally, in the early example we have seen 20 rupees is the income. If it increases to 50 rupees, prices of the commodities remaining the same, then he can afford more. So naturally, the income of the consumer, the budget line shifts rightward, T to T1, that is CT to C1, T1. Okay, the consumption of both the commodities increases, both the axes shift rightward, CT to C1, T1. Here, income of the consumer decreases. This situation, the whole world has experienced. Many consumers have experienced during the time of COVID. So, the budget line will shift leftward when the income of the consumer is less. So, when the income of the consumer decreases, the budget line will shift leftward. He can afford only less of both the commodities. So, 4 situations you have seen here. The reasons are mainly 2 factors, price and income. Price of both the commodities increases. When it increases, budget line shift leftward. When the income of the consumer is less, the budget line shifts leftward. Then rightward shift of budget line when the prices of the both commodities decreases or income of the consumer increases. When income changes, the assumption is that price is remaining constant. Okay, when price changes, the assumption is that income is remaining constant. When income changes, the assumption is that price is remaining constant. But if both changes, it will have implications on the budget line. So, shifting budget line, certain specific cases are there. See, here the price of a commodity changes, income remaining the same. So, price of a commodity, here we have taken the example of tea and coffee. If price of tea only increases, price of coffee remaining the same. So, the consumer can now afford only less quantity of tea. So, the consumption of tea will decrease from T1 to T1. Okay. Consumption of tea will decrease from T to T1. Maybe it was 6 units, now it has come down to 5 units. And the consumption of coffee remaining the same. Next is the price of tea decreases. The price of coffee remaining the same. So, when the price of tea decreases, consumer can now more quantity of tea. So, only the consumption of tea increases. See, there is no shift in both the axes. Only this axis is changing. So, more consumption of tea because price of tea decreases, price of coffee remaining the same. Here, the just opposite situation. Price of tea remaining same. Price of coffee changes. Here, price of coffee is decreasing. So, now the consumer can afford more of coffee and the consumption of tea is remaining same. Here, the price of coffee increases and the consumption of tea will remain the same, but consumption of coffee will come down because price of coffee increases. So, 4 situations are here. Here price of tea increases, its consumption gets reduced, the consumption of coffee remaining the same. Here price of tea decreases, so the consumer is preferring more tea, consumption of coffee remaining the same. Here price of coffee changes, price of tea remaining the same. Okay. Next is budget line, consumer's equilibrium using budget line and the indifference curve.